A girl helped a fainting stranger in the clinic hallway, only to learn he was the anonymous donor who saved her program. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get started with today's story. Have you ever helped someone, only to find out later they were someone important, someone who changed your life? Well, that's exactly what happened to Sophie. She never expected that one kind act would lead to a revelation that would change her future. Sophie stood in the busy clinic hallway, glancing at the clock above the reception desk. It was almost her break, and she was exhausted. Being a nurse's assistant in a busy clinic was no easy task. She had been working here for nearly a year, juggling her studies and her passion for medicine. But the financial pressure was getting to her. The school program she was part of required a lot of funding, and she had no idea how she was going to afford the upcoming semester without a scholarship or some kind of financial aid. As she stood there, lost in thought, she noticed a man walking down the hallway, his face pale and his steps unsteady. Before she could react, he collapsed in front of her, his body hitting the floor with a sickening thud. Panic surged through her chest. She immediately rushed to his side, checking for a pulse and trying to rouse him. His breathing was shallow, and his skin was cold to the touch. Without hesitation, Sophie lifted his head and began performing CPR, calling for help at the same time. The clinic staff quickly gathered around, assisting Sophie in stabilizing the man. As they worked together to get him back to consciousness, Sophie couldn't help but wonder who he was. He looked well-dressed, and there was something about his calm demeanor that made her think he was more than just a random patient. After what felt like an eternity, the man's eyes flickered open. His gaze was dazed, but there was a spark of recognition when he looked up at Sophie. "Thank you," he murmured weakly. Sophie didn't have time to ask any questions as the doctors took over, moving him to a treatment room. She stood there, heart racing, as she watched them wheel him away. She had no idea who he was, but the feeling of saving someone's life gave her a strange sense of pride. Later that day, Sophie's shift ended, and she headed home, trying to shake off the strange encounter. She didn't know it yet, but this brief moment of kindness would soon lead to something much bigger, something that would change everything. But for now, she was focused on the more immediate challenge, figuring out how to pay for her next semester of school. Little did she know, her path was about to cross with the very man she had helped, and the world would soon reveal a hidden connection that would alter her destiny. I did not expect to see him again so soon. Sophie was sitting at a small table in the clinic's break room, scrolling through her phone, when she heard a soft knock on the door. She looked up, surprised to see a familiar face standing in the doorway. It was the man she had helped earlier in the hallway, the one who had collapsed and nearly fainted in front of her. He looked different now, cleaner, well-groomed, and wearing a sharp suit, his eyes clear and full of gratitude. Sophie stood up quickly, not sure what to say or do. "You?" Sophie hesitated, unsure whether to continue. "You're okay?" she asked, her voice betraying the concern she still felt from the earlier incident. He smiled softly, his demeanor calm, yet with a hint of something deeper, something she couldn't quite place. "Yes, thanks to you," he said, his voice steady and warm. "I don't know how to thank you enough." Sophie felt a strange mixture of pride and awkwardness, not knowing how to respond. She had been a nurse's assistant for nearly a year, but this was the first time she had saved someone's life in such a direct and personal way. She was still processing it. "It was nothing," she said quickly, brushing off her own role in the situation. "I just did what anyone would have done." He shook his head, stepping into the room. "No, what you did was more than just helping. You saved my life. I owe you more than a simple thank you." Sophie didn't know how to respond to that. The man was clearly grateful, but she felt uneasy at his intensity. She hadn't saved him for recognition or reward. She had simply acted on instinct, trying to help a person in need. "If you don't mind me asking," Sophie said after a moment, "how did you end up here? I mean, at the clinic?" The man hesitated, his eyes flickering slightly, as if debating how much to share. "Well," he began, "I'm not just anyone. I own a foundation that funds medical programs like the one you're part of. I've been working to help communities that don't have access to the resources they need. Sophie's mind raced as she processed his words. She had heard of the foundation. It was one of the largest nonprofit organizations supporting healthcare access for low-income families. She hadn't known that this man, the one who had collapsed just hours ago, was behind it all. I didn't recognize you, Sophie said, still trying to wrap her head around the situation. You don't exactly look like the typical foundation donor. He chuckled softly, a glint of amusement in his eyes. That's the idea, he said. I prefer to remain anonymous. I don't want anyone to feel pressured to thank me. I do this because it's the right thing to do, not for the recognition. Sophie nodded, though she still didn't fully understand. He was a powerful figure, but here he was, thanking her like she was the one who had done something extraordinary. Anyway, he continued, I came here today for a different reason. I wanted to make sure you knew just how much your actions meant to me. And I also wanted to offer you something I think could help you. Sophie blinked, caught off guard. What do you mean? She asked. I'm aware of the financial struggles that medical students face, he said, his tone serious. I know you're working hard to get by, but I also know how expensive education can be. I'd like to offer you a scholarship, one that could cover your tuition and living expenses for the rest of your program. Sophie stared at him in shock. She had never expected anything like this. A scholarship was the last thing on her mind as she struggled to make ends meet. But here was this stranger, this man who had once been unconscious on the floor, offering her exactly what she needed. Wait, you're offering me a scholarship? Sophie repeated, her voice trembling. He nodded. Yes, I've seen your potential, even if I haven't known you for long. I believe in what you're doing, and I want to make sure you don't have to worry about money while you pursue your dream of becoming a doctor. Sophie's heart raced as she processed what he was saying. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, one that would allow her to focus on her studies without the constant weight of financial stress hanging over her. But something inside her hesitated. I don't know what to say, Sophie whispered. I didn't do anything special. I just helped you when you needed it. The man smiled, his expression softening. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness are the most important. You didn't know who I was, but you still helped me. You have a heart of gold, and that's exactly what this world needs more of. Sophie's mind was spinning. She had never expected her simple act of kindness to lead to something like this. Are you sure about this? She asked, her voice still shaky. I mean, it's a huge offer, he nodded again, his eyes unwavering. I'm sure. Consider it a small repayment for the life you saved. But it's also an investment in someone who can make a real difference in the world. You. Sophie stood there for a moment, overwhelmed by the weight of his words. She had helped a stranger without expecting anything in return, but now she was being given an opportunity to achieve her dreams, thanks to the very person she had helped. It was surreal, and for a moment, she wondered if she was dreaming. But one thing was certain, her life was about to change in a way she had never imagined. I still couldn't believe it. The offer was so sudden, so generous, that it almost didn't feel real. Sophie sat at her small kitchen table, the scholarship letter in front of her, her hands shaking as she traced the words with her finger. She had never expected her life to take such a turn. Just a week ago, she was struggling to figure out how to make ends meet, wondering if she would have to drop out of school. And now, here she was, holding a scholarship that would cover her tuition and living expenses for the rest of her program. It was the break she had been praying for. But there was something else, a feeling she couldn't shake. She hadn't just helped any stranger. This man, Grant Carter, was the head of a foundation that had been funding medical programs for years, and she hadn't even known it. Sophie was trying to focus on the positive, to appreciate the incredible opportunity that was now in front of her. Yet, a part of her still felt uneasy. She had never wanted anyone to do something for her out of pity or obligation. What if Grant was just feeling guilty for fainting on her watch? What if his offer wasn't truly out of kindness, but out of some misplaced sense of duty? The thought gnawed at her, but there was no denying that his words had been sincere. He hadn't asked for anything in return. In fact, he had made it clear that he didn't want to be recognized for his contributions. He was simply trying to help, and that made Sophie feel both grateful and guilty. After all, she hadn't helped him because she expected anything in return. She had just done what seemed right in the moment. She had always wanted to be a doctor, but the financial burden of medical school was overwhelming. Now, that burden had been lifted, and for the first time in a long time, Sophie felt like she had the chance to truly focus on her studies. But what if this wasn't the right way to get there? What if she wasn't truly deserving of this scholarship? Sophie tried to push the thoughts aside, but they lingered. It was hard to ignore the weight of the decision. Was she truly earning this? Or was she just a recipient of someone else's generosity? She shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. Sophie had always been independent, always wanted to make her own way. This scholarship felt like a lifeline, but it also felt like she had to justify it somehow. She couldn't stop thinking about how her life had changed so drastically in such a short amount of time. One simple act of kindness had turned everything around for her. It wasn't just about the scholarship, though. It was about something deeper, something more meaningful. Sophie had always known that there was more to life than just getting by. She had dreamed of being a doctor because she wanted to help people, just like she had helped Grant. But now, she was beginning to realize that helping others was also about accepting help in return. It was a two-way street, and she was starting to understand that. Grant's offer wasn't just about money. It was about building a connection, a partnership. It was about giving someone the chance to make a difference, and Sophie now realized that she had that chance. The next day, Sophie walked into the clinic, her head held high. She had made her decision. She would accept the scholarship. But more than that, she would commit herself to becoming the best doctor she could be, to honor the opportunity that had been given to her. Grant had given her a chance, and she wasn't going to waste it. She knew the road ahead would be difficult. The demands of medical school were high, and the challenges she would face in the clinic would be many. But for the first time in a long time, Sophie felt like she was on the right path. She wasn't just working for herself anymore. She was working for others, for the patients she would one day help, and for the people who believed in her. As she walked down the hallway to her shift, Sophie saw Grant again, standing at the entrance. He smiled when he saw her, and for the first time, Sophie didn't feel nervous or unsure. She felt confident. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady. "You've changed my life." Grant nodded, his smile warm. "You've earned it. Keep going. You're going to make a difference." Sophie smiled back, her heart full. She had a long way to go, but now she had the support she needed to get there. She was ready for the next chapter, whatever it would bring. "I thought I was prepared for the challenges that lay ahead. After all, I had always known that medical school wouldn't be easy. But now, with the scholarship in hand and my future feeling a little more secure, I was faced with something even more difficult, learning how to accept help without feeling indebted." As I walked into the clinic that morning, ready to start my shift, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still unsure about my place in all of this. My head was filled with questions. Was I truly deserving of this scholarship? Was I capable of living up to the expectations that now seemed to weigh heavily on my shoulders? I had always been independent, always the one to figure things out on my own. But now, I had to learn how to embrace the kindness others had shown me and use it to fuel my growth. Grant's generosity had given me a chance to achieve my dreams. But what if I couldn't live up to it? What if I failed? The day was long, and the work was exhausting, but it was also incredibly rewarding. As I assisted in treating patients, I realized something. I wasn't doing this for myself anymore. I was doing it for the people who believed in me, for the patients who trusted me, and for the mentors who had guided me. I couldn't waste this opportunity. That evening, as I was finishing my shift, I ran into Grant once again. He was standing in the clinic's lobby, chatting with one of the doctors. When he saw me, he waved me over, a friendly smile on his face. "How's your day been?" he asked as I approached. I smiled, feeling the weight of the scholarship and my commitment settle in. "Busy but good. I've learned so much already." "I'm glad to hear that," he replied. "You're doing important work, Sophie. Don't forget that." I nodded, grateful for his encouragement, but also feeling a little overwhelmed. "It's just a lot to take in," I admitted. "I feel like I'm carrying a lot on my shoulders now." "That's normal," Grant said, his voice steady. "But you don't have to carry it alone. Remember, you've got people who want to see you succeed. You're not in this by yourself." His words gave me a sense of relief, but also reminded me of the responsibility I had taken on. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the people who had supported me and the patients I would one day help. "I won't forget," I said softly. "Thank you for everything." Grant smiled, his eyes warm with genuine care. "I have no doubt that you'll do amazing things, Sophie. You have the heart and the drive to make a real difference." After our conversation, I felt a little lighter. The weight of responsibility didn't feel so heavy anymore. I wasn't doing this alone. I had people supporting me, and that was something I hadn't truly understood until now. As I left the clinic that evening, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was ready to face the challenges ahead, not with fear, but with the confidence that I was on the right path. The next few weeks passed by in a blur of classes, shifts at the clinic, and late-night study sessions. The scholarship was a constant reminder that I was moving forward, but I still struggled with the idea of accepting help. It was hard for me to let go of the notion that I had to do everything on my own, that I had to prove myself without anyone's assistance. But slowly, I began to realize that the help I had received wasn't a burden, it was an opportunity. And with that realization came a shift in how I viewed my future. I wasn't alone in this, and that was the greatest gift I could ever receive. One evening, as I sat at my desk studying, I got a call from Grant. "Sophie, I hope I'm not interrupting," he said when I picked up the phone. "I wanted to let you know that we're having a charity gala next month. I'd love for you to be our guest of honor. We're celebrating the success of our medical programs, and I think it would be a great opportunity for you to meet some of the people who support these initiatives." My heart skipped a beat. A charity gala? As the guest of honor? It felt surreal. I had never been to anything like that before, let alone been invited to such a prestigious event. "I don't know what to say," I said, my voice filled with surprise. I'm just a student. Are you sure I'm the right person for this?" "Absolutely," Grant replied. "You're not just a student, Sophie. You're someone who's going to make a real difference. You deserve to be recognized for your hard work and dedication." His words left me speechless. It was hard to believe that someone like him, the person who had changed my life, saw me as worthy of such recognition. But in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about a scholarship or a gala. This was about the journey I had taken, the people I had met, and the future I was building. It was about accepting help, learning to grow with the support of others, and, ultimately, embracing the possibility of making a difference. I accepted the invitation, my heart filled with gratitude and excitement for what was to come. I didn't know exactly where this path would lead, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face it with open arms. I was nervous as the night of the charity gala approached. Despite the excitement, there was an overwhelming sense of uncertainty within me. The invitation Grant had extended was an honor I had never expected, and now that it was time to attend, I couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't belong. The venue was nothing short of breathtaking. An elegant ballroom filled with people in exquisite attire, the soft glow of chandeliers casting a warm light over the room. I stood near the entrance, my heart racing as I took in the grandeur of it all. I had never been to anything like this before. I was just a student, a nurse's assistant who had received a scholarship by chance. And now, here I was, as the guest of honor. It felt surreal. I took a deep breath and tried to steady myself. As I made my way through the crowd, I saw Grant across the room, talking to a few people. He caught sight of me and smiled, motioning for me to join him. His warm, welcoming expression made me feel a little more at ease. "Sophie, I'm so glad you could make it," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. I smiled back, feeling the nerves settle slightly. "Thank you for having me. This is all overwhelming." "I can imagine," Grant replied with a chuckle. "But you deserve it. You've worked hard, and this is just the beginning." I nodded, but deep down, I still felt like I was just pretending to be part of this world. I had worked so hard to get to where I was, but there was still that voice in my head telling me I wasn't enough, that I didn't deserve to be here. As the night went on, I tried to push those thoughts aside. I mingled with some of the other guests, people who had supported the foundation and its initiatives. They were all kind and interested in what I had to say, but there was always a small part of me that felt like I didn't belong. I kept reminding myself that I was here for a reason, that the scholarship was not just a gift but a recognition of my potential. And yet, every time I looked around at the people in the room, I couldn't help but feel out of place. Later in the evening, Grant took the stage to speak about the foundation's achievements and the incredible work they had done. He spoke passionately about the importance of giving back and the impact that healthcare initiatives had on underserved communities. As he spoke, I realized that this wasn't just about the money or the accolades. It was about the difference that we, as individuals, could make in the world. It was about connecting with others, helping where we could, and creating a legacy of compassion and care. The applause that followed his speech was loud, and Grant looked genuinely moved by the response. He glanced over at me from the stage and smiled. I couldn't help but smile back. I wasn't just here to be celebrated. I was here to contribute. I had a role to play, and I was determined to make the most of it. After the speech, the night continued with more conversations and mingling. But as the evening wore on, I began to realize that my feelings of inadequacy were slowly fading. The more I interacted with people, the more I realized that they weren't judging me for being out of place. They were welcoming me, encouraging me, and recognizing the work I was doing. For the first time in a long while, I began to feel like I belonged. I wasn't just a scholarship recipient or a nurse's assistant. I was someone who could make a difference, who had the potential to do something great. As the night came to a close, Grant found me once again. "You did great tonight," he said with a genuine smile. "You made an impact, Sophie. I can see the future in you." I looked at him, feeling a mix of emotions, gratitude, pride, and a newfound confidence. "Thank you," I said softly, feeling the weight of his words sink in. "I don't think I could have done this without you." Grant smiled, his eyes warm. "You've done all the hard work yourself. I'm just here to help you along the way." As the gala ended, I left the ballroom with a feeling of clarity that I hadn't had before. I was no longer the unsure student who doubted herself. I was someone with a purpose, someone who could achieve her dreams and make a difference in the world. I was ready to take on the challenges ahead. The road wouldn't be easy, but it was mine to walk. And for the first time in a long time, I was confident that I could do it. I had always known that the road to becoming a doctor would be challenging, but with each passing day, the weight of it felt heavier. The scholarship had lifted a huge burden off my shoulders, but the reality of medical school was still overwhelming. As I sat in class, listening to lectures on complex medical procedures, I couldn't help but feel out of my depth. I had never been the most confident student, and despite all the hard work I had put in, there were moments when I doubted whether I belonged in this field. I was constantly questioning if I was truly cut out for this. But something had changed inside me after the gala. I had realized that the path I was on wasn't just about passing exams or earning degrees. It was about making a difference in people's lives. I remembered Grant's words about my potential and how he had seen something in me that I had never recognized before. It wasn't just about what I had already accomplished. It was about what I could do with the opportunities ahead of me. The more I thought about it, the more I understood that I had to embrace these challenges, not shy away from them. The pressure was still there, of course, but now I saw it as a driving force, something that would push me to do better, to be better. But even with this newfound determination, there were still moments when I struggled. Late nights in the library, hours spent studying, it all started to blur together. And in those moments, when my mind was exhausted, I found myself thinking about Grant again. He had given me this chance, but what did I really owe him in return? I had always prided myself on being independent, but now I was realizing that there was a balance between independence and accepting help. It wasn't weakness to lean on others. It was strength to accept support and use it to fuel your growth. The turning point came one evening after a particularly grueling shift at the clinic. I was physically and mentally drained, questioning my abilities when Grant called. I had almost forgotten about the time he had mentioned that he wanted to meet for coffee soon. When I picked up, his voice was as warm as ever. "Sophie, how's everything going?" "It's going," I replied, a little too tired to give him a full update. "You sound exhausted. How about we grab coffee tomorrow? You've been working hard, and I think you deserve a break." His offer was like a lifeline, and for the first time in a long while, I realized how much I needed to talk to someone. The next day, we met at a small cafe near the clinic. The moment I sat down across from him, I felt an unexpected sense of relief. I hadn't realized how much I needed someone to listen. "I've been struggling," I admitted, feeling the weight of everything I had been carrying. "It's just a lot to handle sometimes, and I'm not sure I'm cut out for this." Grant listened quietly, nodding in understanding. "You're doing exactly what you should be doing," he said gently. "You're pushing yourself, and it's tough, but that's how growth happens. The fact that you care this much shows that you're already on the right path." His words hit me in a way I wasn't expecting. I had been so focused on my own doubts that I hadn't stopped to recognize how far I had come. This wasn't about perfection, it was about progress. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of this," I confessed. "Sometimes I just feel like I'm not enough." Grant smiled softly. "That's a natural feeling to have, Sophie. But let me tell you something I wish someone had told me when I was in your shoes. You are more than enough. You're here because you've worked for it, because you have something special to offer, and you don't have to do it all by yourself. It's okay to accept help. Those words stayed with me long after our conversation ended. I had been so afraid of relying on others, but Grant had reminded me that accepting support was not a sign of weakness. It was a part of the journey. Over the next few weeks, I started to embrace that mindset. I pushed myself harder in my studies, but I also took time to accept the help and guidance of others. The clinic staff, my classmates, even Grant, they were all part of my support system, and together, we could achieve something greater than any of us could on our own. The more I accepted help, the more confident I became. I realized that the greatest strength wasn't in doing everything by myself. It was in knowing when to reach out, when to lean on those who cared. With each new day, I grew more certain of my path. The challenges ahead would be difficult, but I wasn't facing them alone. And for the first time, I felt truly ready to take on whatever came next. I had finally begun to believe in myself again. The overwhelming pressure I had once felt seemed to ease, little by little. The long nights of studying, the constant balancing of my duties at the clinic, and the weight of uncertainty about the future, it was all becoming manageable. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of direction and purpose. But just as I was starting to feel comfortable in my progress, life threw another challenge my way. It was a regular day at the clinic, or so I thought. I had been working on a new research project for one of my professors, and the pressure was on to get everything just right. Between the clinic shifts and my coursework, I was stretched thin, but I had convinced myself that this was just part of the journey. That afternoon, however, I received an email that made my heart drop. It was from the school's financial office, and the subject line was about my scholarship status. I opened it, hoping for good news, but what I read caused my stomach to churn. The email informed me that my scholarship had been suspended due to some clerical errors. It was a simple mistake, a misunderstanding, but the implications were devastating. If I didn't correct it immediately, I would lose the scholarship and be forced to withdraw from the program. I sat there for a moment, frozen, as the weight of the news sank in. How could this happen now? After everything I had gone through to get to this point, how could a simple mistake put it all in jeopardy? I immediately called the office, my hands trembling as I tried to explain the situation. But the woman on the other end of the phone was firm. "There's nothing we can do at this point, miss," she said. "You'll need to file an appeal and wait for a response. It could take weeks." Weeks? I didn't have weeks. My entire future depended on that scholarship, and I couldn't afford to wait. I hung up the phone and sat there in silence, trying to process what had just happened. My mind was spinning with the possibilities, none of them good. How was I going to pay for the next semester if this wasn't resolved? How could I go on without it? I felt helpless, lost, and frustrated. The uncertainty I had tried so hard to push aside had come crashing back in full force. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I received another unexpected message. This time, it was from Grant. "Sophie, I heard about the issue with your scholarship. I want you to know that we'll take care of it. You won't have to worry about anything." I stared at the message, stunned. It felt like a lifeline, but at the same time, it felt too good to be true. Was this really happening? Could Grant, the very person who had given me the scholarship in the first place, really be stepping in to help me again? Without hesitation, I called him. "Grant, I don't know what to say. I just found out that my scholarship has been suspended. I don't know how to fix it." "Don't worry, Sophie," he said calmly, as if this was nothing. "I've already made a call to the school. Everything is going to be okay. They'll sort it out." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It was almost too much to comprehend. Here I was, once again relying on Grant's generosity, but this time, there was a sense of pride in it. I wasn't just receiving help. I was receiving it from someone who believed in me. After the call, I felt a mix of emotions. Gratitude, relief, and yet, a lingering sense of guilt. I had always told myself that I could do everything on my own. I had been so determined to prove that I could make it without anyone's help. And yet, here I was, relying on others once again. But this time, it felt different. This wasn't about weakness. This was about strength in vulnerability. It was about trusting those who cared for me. And in doing so, I was opening myself up to even greater opportunities. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the remaining doubts in my mind. Grant had taken care of the problem, just like he said he would. I didn't need to carry the weight of everything on my own. I had the support I needed to succeed. The next few weeks went by quickly, and I found myself focusing even more on my studies. The sense of relief from the scholarship issue allowed me to dive deeper into my coursework, my research, and my work at the clinic. And as I did, I realized something important. I had spent so much of my life trying to prove my independence that I had forgotten how to rely on others. I had shut myself off from accepting help, believing that I needed to do it all by myself. But the truth was, no one achieves success alone. We all need support, whether it's from friends, mentors, or even unexpected sources like Grant. And that realization was liberating. I no longer felt trapped by the idea that I had to do everything on my own. I could embrace the support that was offered, and in doing so, I could achieve more than I ever thought possible. As the semester continued, my confidence grew. I was no longer just a student struggling to survive. I was a student who had a purpose, who had the support of people who believed in me. And with that, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them with determination and strength, knowing that I was never truly alone. I had been working harder than ever before, pushing myself further each day, and yet, I had never felt more alive. The weight of the scholarship issue had lifted, and with it, I felt like I could finally breathe. I had thrown myself into my studies and clinical work, determined to prove to myself, and to everyone else, that I was worthy of the chance I had been given. Each day at the clinic brought new challenges, but with each challenge, I grew more confident in my ability to rise to the occasion. I was no longer just a student. I was a part of something bigger, a community of professionals all working toward the same goal, improving lives. But as the months passed, I began to realize that this journey wasn't just about medical knowledge. It was about understanding people, their stories, their struggles, and their humanity. Every patient I met had a story to tell, and with each story, I learned something new about myself. There was one patient, in particular, who left a lasting impact on me. Her name was Sarah, and she had been coming to the clinic for treatment for several months. Sarah was in her late 30s, and her diagnosis was terminal. Despite the bleak prognosis, she had an incredible spirit about her. She never complained, always greeted me with a smile, and showed a quiet strength that I couldn't help but admire. I had learned about her through the medical team, but it wasn't until I started working directly with her that I truly understood what it meant to be resilient. One afternoon, as I was preparing for my shift, I found Sarah sitting alone in the waiting room. She was gazing out the window, a soft expression on her face. I hesitated for a moment before walking over. "Hi, Sarah," I said gently, not wanting to interrupt her thoughts. She turned to me with that same warm smile. "Hi, Sophie. Just watching the world go by," she said softly. There was something about her calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. "How are you feeling today?" I asked, taking a seat beside her. "Same as usual. Some days are better than others," she replied, her voice steady. There was a long pause, and then she added, "You know, I've been thinking about something lately." "What's that?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. "I've been thinking about how much I've learned from my own journey," she said, looking out the window again. "Life isn't about how long you live, Sophie. It's about what you do with the time you have. I've spent a lot of time wishing for more years, but now, I'm focusing on making the most of every moment." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had been so focused on my own goals, my own struggles, that I hadn't really stopped to appreciate the small moments, the ones that, when strung together, made up the bigger picture. Sarah had a point. Life wasn't just about surviving the challenges. It was about living fully, no matter how much time you had left. As the days went by, I found myself reflecting more and more on Sarah's words. I started to realize that I had been so focused on proving myself, on getting through the next exam, the next rotation, that I had forgotten to appreciate the journey itself. And it wasn't just about me. I had a responsibility to the people around me, my classmates, my mentors, my patients, to show up, not just as someone who was working toward a degree, but as someone who cared, who made a difference in the lives of others. The next week, I was assigned to help with a community outreach program organized by the clinic. It was a volunteer initiative to provide free healthcare services to underserved areas of the city, and it felt like the perfect opportunity to take what I had learned and apply it to something real. The program was challenging, but it was also incredibly fulfilling. As we traveled from neighborhood to neighborhood, providing care to people who might not have otherwise had access to it, I saw firsthand the impact of what we were doing. And in those moments, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. One evening, after a long day of work, I sat down with Grant for a cup of coffee. We had been talking more frequently lately, and I had started to see him as more than just the man who had given me a scholarship. He had become someone I respected, someone who believed in me when I had a hard time believing in myself. "You've been doing incredible work lately, Sophie," he said, his tone genuine. "I see the changes in you, the way you've started to connect with the people you're helping. That's the real gift you have, your ability to connect, to truly listen." I felt a wave of gratitude for his kind words. "Thank you, Grant," I said, the weight of his praise sinking in. "I'm starting to see that what I'm doing is more than just about learning medical techniques. It's about making a difference, even in the smallest ways." He nodded, his eyes softening. "Exactly. And you're doing it every day." That conversation stayed with me for a long time. I had been so focused on becoming a doctor, on achieving success, that I had forgotten the true essence of what it meant to be in this field. It wasn't about titles or accolades. It was about people. It was about helping, connecting, and understanding. I was starting to see the bigger picture, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was truly on the right path. As the days turned into weeks, I continued to grow, not just as a student, but as a person. I was no longer just working for a degree. I was working for a purpose. And that purpose, I realized, was far more important than any title I could ever earn. I had come a long way. It had been nearly a year since the day I first received the scholarship, a moment that felt like a dream at the time. But as I stood in front of the clinic, ready to begin my final year of medical school, I realized that it was no longer just about the scholarship. It was about everything I had learned and everything I was about to become. The pressures had never been heavier, and yet, I had never felt more capable. I had faced countless obstacles along the way, but with each challenge, I had grown stronger. My confidence had blossomed, not because of the title or the accolades, but because of the people I had met, the patients I had cared for, and the lessons I had learned. I had learned that being a doctor wasn't just about mastering medical knowledge. It was about connection, compassion, and resilience. Every patient who walked through those clinic doors taught me something new, something that couldn't be found in textbooks. There were days when I doubted myself, when the weight of it all felt too much to bear. But in those moments, I remembered Grant's words, "You are more than enough." It wasn't just about achieving the perfect score or being the best. It was about doing the best I could with the tools I had, and knowing that even the smallest act of kindness could change someone's life. As my final year progressed, I found myself taking on more responsibilities. I worked closely with the clinic's medical team, assisting with more complex cases and helping to mentor new students who were just starting out. It was a humbling experience, and I often thought back to the beginning, when I had been so unsure of myself. Now, I was in a position to help others, just as I had been helped. I wasn't doing this alone anymore. The support I had received from Grant, my mentors, and my classmates had shaped me into the person I was today. And as I walked into the clinic each day, I knew that I had something to offer, something valuable that could make a real difference in the lives of the people I cared for. One afternoon, as I was finishing up my rounds, I received a message from Grant. It was brief, but it filled me with a sense of pride. "Sophie, I'm incredibly proud of you. You've come so far, and I have no doubt that you will continue to do great things. Keep pushing, keep caring, and keep believing in yourself." His words hit me in a way I wasn't expecting. They weren't just about the work I had done. They were about the person I had become. I realized then that the journey wasn't just about the destination. It was about the growth, the challenges, the setbacks, and the triumphs along the way. It was about the people who helped me and the people I would one day help in return. As the final months of my medical program passed, I found myself preparing for the next big step. Graduation was fast approaching, and with it came the realization that this chapter of my life was almost over. It was a bittersweet feeling. I had worked so hard to get here, but there was still so much left to do. And for the first time, I felt ready. I wasn't the same person who had entered medical school with a dream of helping people. I had become someone who truly understood the importance of connection and compassion in healing. On the day of graduation, I stood in front of the crowd with my fellow graduates, filled with a mix of emotions, pride, excitement, and gratitude. As I received my diploma, I thought back to everything that had brought me here, the late nights studying, the long hours spent in the clinic, the moments of doubt, and the moments of triumph. And most importantly, I thought about the people who had supported me along the way. Grant, who had believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. My mentors, who had guided me with patience and wisdom, and the patience, who had taught me more than any textbook ever could. As I walked across the stage, I knew that this was just the beginning. There would be more challenges, more hurdles to overcome, but I was no longer afraid. I had learned that success wasn't about doing everything perfectly. It was about doing everything with purpose, with heart, and with a willingness to learn. And as I looked out at the crowd, I couldn't help but smile, knowing that I had made it, and that the journey was far from over. In this compelling tale of transformation, follow Sophie's journey as she rises from uncertainty to success with the help of a selfless millionaire who believes in her potential. Her story is a perfect example of how millionaire stories often reveal unexpected opportunities and life-changing moments. As Sophie navigates through the challenges of medical school, she discovers that true success is not only about academic achievement, but about the connections and support that shape our paths. Like many millionaire stories, Sophie's experience shows that sometimes a single act of kindness can alter the course of someone's future. With the mentorship of a millionaire who sees her worth, Sophie grows both professionally and personally, learning to embrace help and build meaningful relationships. These millionaire stories offer valuable lessons about resilience, generosity, and the power of giving. Sophie's journey is one of growth, sacrifice, and the recognition that with the right support, anyone can achieve their dreams. Her story is a testament to how millionaire stories can inspire us to look beyond ourselves and strive for something greater, proving that sometimes the road to success is paved with kindness and unexpected allies.